Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Welcome back to our channel. After a comprehensive overview about the 58 types of angels created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are now moving towards the Qahiril, angel of dominance over lower desires. Qahiril is described in the language of spiritual tradition as the angel appointed by Allah to subdue, restrain and overpower the lower desires called hawa or hawas that arise from the ego called Nafs. His very meaning is to overpower, to subdue, to conquer with irresistible mastery. Thus, Qahiril is the celestial force that confronts every impulse that seeks to pull the human being toward base inclinations, reminding the believer of divine authority over the chaotic stirrings of the self. These are the beings of unfathomable might, created from the most luminous light of Nur Muhammadi, meaning the divine light of Prophet Muhammad. While the Nafs whispers arrogance, lust, anger, greed and heedlessness, Qahiril stands as the divine antidote, instilling spiritual strength, inward discipline and the ability to reject impulses that darken the heart. He appears in the spiritual cosmology as the commander of inner conquest. Not conquest over people or lands, but conquest over the inner kingdom where the true battle of the believer takes place. In classical accounts of inner jihad, Qahiril is associated with breaking the dominance of the nafs, turning the heart away from temptation, empowering repentance, strengthening the will in moments of moral weakness, and illuminating the path to sincerity and taqwa. Tasawwufi masters describe him as the angelic presence that descends upon a seeker during moments of intense internal struggle, when a sin seems irresistible, when pride flares, or when a believer feels overwhelmed by impulses they cannot articulate. At such moments, Qahiril activates the divine rule within the soul, helping the seeker reclaim mastery over their inner world. Through his influence, the believer learns the true meaning of al-Qaha, not domination of others, but domination of oneself for the sake of Allah. He is a reminder that spiritual strength does not arise from the ego, but from the divine help granted to those who strive to purify themselves. Before going further, a quick update. All our videos are available in both English and Urdu languages on our YouTube channel. You can find them by navigating to our playlists where all our videos are available for your convenience. Now let's continue. Quranic mentions 1. Allah alone is Al-Qahhar, the overwhelming subduer. These verses describe Allah's quality of dominance called Qahr, from which Qahiril derives his function. Mentioned in Surah Al-Ra'd verse 16. He is Allah, the One, the Subduer, Al-Qahhar, mentioned in Surah Yusuf verse 39. O two companions of prison, many lords, or Allah, the One, the Subduer, mentioned in Surah Az-Zumar verse 4. To him belongs whatever is in the heavens and earth, and he is the mighty, the subduer, meaning angelic forces like Qahiril operate under Allah's attribute of Qahr, the divine power that breaks the dominance of the lower self. 2. Verses on the inner battle against desires called Hawa or Hawas. These are the Quran's strongest descriptions of Allah subduing the lower desires, which is precisely the domain of Qahiril. Mentioned in Surah Al-Jathiyah verse 23. Have you seen the one who takes his desires as his God? Allah leaves him astray, mentioned in Surah Sad verse 26. Do not follow desire, it will lead you astray from the path of Allah. Mentioned in Surah An-Nāzi at 79, 40-41. As for the one who feared standing before his Lord and restrained his soul from its desires, paradise will be his home, mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf verse 28. And do not obey one whose heart we have made heedless, and who follows his desires, meaning These verses describe the spiritual battlefield where Qahiril is active, where desires rise and divine intervention restrains them. 3 verses where Allah sends angels to strengthen the believers. These verses show the Quranic foundation for angels aiding humans in moments of weakness, pressure, and moral testing. Mentioned in Surah An-Anfal verse 9, I will reinforce you with 1,000 angels following one another. Mentioned in Surah Al-Anfal verse 12, your Lord inspired the angels. I am with you, so strengthen those who believe. Mentioned in Surah Fussilat verse 31, we are your supporters in worldly life and in the hereafter. Angels speaking. Meaning, though these verses describe battle, Sufi commentators extend them to the inner battle against the Nafs, the battlefield where Qahiril is assigned. 4 verses on the Nafs and its subjugation. These verses form the primary scriptural basis for Qahiril's role, mentioned in Surah Yusuf verse 53. Indeed, the soul commands evil, mentioned in Surah Al-Qiyamah verse 2. The disciplined soul, Nafs al-Lawwama, mentioned in Surah Ash-Shams verses 7 to 10. By the soul and he who proportioned it, then inspired it with its wickedness and righteousness. Successful indeed is the one who purifies it, and unsuccessful is the one who corrupts it. Meaning, these verses directly point to the need for divine intervention to overpower the Nafs, precisely the work attributed to Qahiril. 5 verses describing the crushing of evil impulses. These verses describe Allah overpowering internal impulses, a theme closely tied to Qahiril. Mentioned in Surah An-Nisa, verse 28, Allah wants to lighten your burden, for the human being was created weak. Mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 268. Shaitan threatens you with poverty and commands you to immorality, while Allah promises forgiveness. Mentioned in Surah Al-Araf verse 200, and if a whisper from Shaitan touches you, seek refuge in Allah. He is the all-hearing, the all-knowing, meaning this divine assistance against impulses is the arena within which Qahiril operates. 6 verses on breaking spiritual arrogance, since arrogance meaning takabur is one of the major lower desires that Qahiril restrains. Mentioned in Surah Al-Isra verse 37, and do not walk proudly upon the earth, mentioned in Surah Luqman verse 18. Allah does not like the arrogant, the boastful, mentioned in Ar-Araf verse 146. I shall turn away my signs from those who are arrogant on earth, meaning these verses show Allah overpowering the arrogant Nafs, another reflection of Qahiril's function. In our previous videos, we also explored the verse on how Allah created every living thing from water, the creation of the waters above the dome and below the flat earth, the firmament dome above the flat earth, actual shape of the earth according to the Quran and Islamic cosmology, primordial waters of the heavens, the Kursi meaning the footstool of Allah, the Arsh meaning the throne of Allah, Lawat Nafus meaning the sacred tablet, the second creation of Allah, Al-Qadam, why Allah created the universe, the first creation of Allah, the 7 portals and dimensions of the universe, and discussed where Allah was before He created the universe. If you haven't watched them yet, please do. Now let's continue. Hadith mentions, angels inspire good, shaitan inspires evil. Mentioned in Sahih Muslim 2814. There is none among you except that there is a companion from the jinn and a companion from the angels. The Sahaba asked, even you, O Messenger of Allah? He said, even me, except that Allah helped me against him, so he submitted, and he only commands me to good. This is the strongest foundation. The angel inspiring good is the one subduing lower desires, identical in function to Qahiril. Angels strengthen the believer against temptation. Mentioned in Abu Dawood 3641. The angels are with the seekers of knowledge, lowering their wings out of humility, meaning their presence strengthens the believer against the temptations of the Nafs, signifying the spiritual reinforcement attributed to Qahiril. Angels protect humans from evil impulses. Mentioned in Musnad Ahmad 17575. Angels guard the sons of Adam except from his own self, Nafs. This hadith directly identifies angels who restrain external and internal harm, an essential feature of Qahiril. Angels bring tranquility when desires rise. Mentioned in Sahih Muslim 2700. No people gather to remember Allah except that tranquility descends, mercy covers them, angels surround them, meaning the descent of angels calms the heart and subdues urges, matching Qahiril's role in silencing the impulses of desire. Angels replace the whisper of shaitan. Mentioned in Tirmidhi 2988. A whisper comes from the angel encouraging good. A whisper comes from shaitan calling to evil. The angelic whisper that replaces the satanic one is precisely the overpowering Qahar function of Qahiril. Angels help in the battle against Nafs and shaitan, mentioned in Sahih Bukhari 3281 and Sahih Muslim 2175. Shaitan flows through the son of Adam like blood. So narrow is path through hunger. Classical Mufassirun like Hazrat Ibn al-Qayyim, Hazrat al-Qushairi say, when the path of shaitan narrows, angels fill that space. This means angels dominate where desires weaken, the domain assigned to Qahiril. Angels drive away devils when Quran is recited. Narrated in Nasai's Amal al-Yam wa Layla. When the Quran is recited, the devils flee and angels come near. This angelic arrival breaks the dominance of desire, stabilizes the heart, and restores spiritual control. Angels support the believer's heart in trials. Mentioned in Tabarani, the angels descend with calmness during trials. Inner trials, meaning fighting, include surges of desire. Angels controlling and calming the nafs reflect the action of Qahiril. Angels guard humans from evil and harm. Mentioned in Sahih Bukhari 3286, Hadith Sahih Muslim 4091. For every person there are angels before him and behind him, guarding him by the command of Allah. This guarding includes protection from destructive impulses of the nafs. Angels attend the struggle of the believer, mentioned in Musnad Ahmad 21934. The angels send blessings upon the one who struggles in Allah's way. Tasawwufi masters say, the greatest struggle, Jihad al-Akbar, is against the nafs. Angels bless the one engaged in it. Qahiril's domain aligns directly with this description and numbers. The angel who subdues the beasts of desire. Qahiril is described by the Sufi masters as one of the Jalali, meaning majestic angels, whose light is sharp, intense, and overpowering, created specifically to subdue, crush, and silence the impulses of the nafs al-amara, the commanding ego. His presence is described as a flame without smoke, a light without softness, a force that stands between the human heart and its lower urges. Where other angels bring comfort and serenity, Qahiril brings discipline. His light has a weight, a gravity, a pressure that makes sinful impulses feel heavy, distasteful, and difficult. He is said to stand at the inner frontier between the qalb, the heart, and the nafs, the ego, pushing back the waves of desire when they rise, stabilizing the believer when their lower impulses threaten to take control. In Sufi metaphysics, his presence appears at the moment of temptation, especially when a believer hesitates between obedience and desire. The very difficulty of sinning in those moments is considered a sign of Qahiril's nearness. The chill that enters the heart, the sudden clarity, the feeling of Allah is watching or I must stop, all reflect his qahir, his overpowering force. Classical Sufi sources describe angels of his category as tall as mountain peaks, representing the unshakable dominance of divine command, eyes like lightning, signifying insight that pierces illusions of desire, wings like molten iron, symbolizing restraint and firmness, a voice like thunder, meaning the inner voice that shakes the heart away from sin, a luminous chain in his right hand, representing the binding of desires, a sword of light in his left hand, representing the cutting of attachments. These images are not physical descriptions, but inner symbolic visions seen by saints in dreams, kashf, or spiritual unveiling. Qahiril himself is considered one of the 12 great angels assigned to internal purification. His rank is equivalent to the angels of Jalal, meaning majesty, who operate specifically against the destructive forces inside humans. Tasawwufi metaphysicians such as Al-Hakim al-Tirmidhi and the school of Ibn al-Arabi mention angelic divisions responsible for restraining desires. From these understandings, Qahiril's category is said to include 70,000 angels of inner discipline. These angels carry the responsibility of helping believers resist impulses. Each believer is assigned 4 to 7 angels of restraint. Depending on their spiritual level, the strength of their nafs, the purity of their heart, and the amount of dhikr they maintain, these angels assist the believer in blocking destructive impulses, strengthening willpower, creating distance between thought and action, bringing sudden clarity during temptation, and reminding the heart of Allah's nearness. Angels assigned to the 7 levels of the nafs, each level of nafs, Amara, Lawama, Mulhama, Mutmainna, Radia, Madia, Kamla, has a corresponding group of angels. For Qahiril, he governs the angels responsible for the first 3 levels, lower struggle. Nafs al-Amara, commanding ego. Nafs al-Lawama, self-blaming ego. Nafs al-Mulama, inspired ego. These 3 are the battlefield where desires rise. Thus, the angels under Qahiril increase or decrease in number based on the believer's spiritual battle. Some traditions of early Tasawwufi circles state, every temptation triggers the descending of 360 angels to test, restrain, assist, or strengthen the believer according to divine decree. This is why sudden inner firmness is sometimes felt when resisting desire. These angels are believed to descend in that moment. Roll with the prophets, with Prophet Adam. Qahiril's role begins with the earliest trial of humanity. After Prophet Adam's slip in Jannah, the angels of Qahar are said to have descended to strengthen his resolve during his repentance. Their presence helped him resist despair, guilt, and the dark impulses of regret, guiding him toward istighfar, which elevated him again. Qahiril symbolizes the force that allowed Adam to rise after falling. With Prophet Nuh endured a hostile nation for centuries, facing insults, rejection, and emotional strain. The angels of Ka reinforced his determination to continue preaching despite fatigue and overwhelming loneliness. Through Qahiril's force, Prophet Nuh remained unwavering, never succumbing to anger, resentment, or hopelessness. With Prophet Ibrahim, the trial of sacrificing his son is one of the greatest tests against human desire. Tasawwufi teachings state that at the moment Prophet Ibrahim raised the knife, Qahiril's light descended to overpower the human emotions that could have shaken him. His heart remained firm because the angels of divine dominance extinguished all wavering. With Prophet Ismail, when Prophet Ismail said, "Father, do as you are commanded," the angels of Qahar were the inner force strengthening his youthful heart against fear, attachment to life, and emotional longing. Qahiril represents the divine support that allowed him to surrender fully. With Prophet Yaqub, Prophet Yaqub's immense grief over Yusuf could have consumed him, but the angels of Qahir held his grief within divine boundaries, turning emotional devastation into sabr jamil, beautiful patience. Qahiril's function was to prevent grief from slipping into complaint or rebellion. With Prophet Yusuf, perhaps the most direct association. When Prophet Yusuf was tempted by the women of Egypt, the Tasawwufi say that Qahiril's light manifested as the proof of his Lord. This internal overpowering of desire is precisely Qahiril's role, subduing lust and preserving purity. With Prophet Musa, when Musa confronted the Pharaoh, Qahiril strengthened his heart against fear, intimidation, and anger. Each time his people provoked him, the angels of Qahir prevented him from reacting with uncontrolled emotion. His ability to restrain anger at the golden calf is attributed inwardly to Qahiril's support. The shattering of Mount Tor is symbolic in Tasawwuf and is seen as the shattering of the ego within Prophet Musa, to which he could later see the tajalli of Allah on the mountain. With Prophet Harun, Prophet Harun was gentle by nature. Controlling anger and fear was difficult when his people sinned. The angels of Qahir kept him from wavering, allowing him to stand firm against wrong without becoming overwhelmed by emotion. With Prophet Dawood was tested with power, royalty, and personal temptation. His repentance after a moment of human weakness is seen as the work of Qahiril, crushing the whisper of Nafs and turning him completely to Allah with humility. With Prophet Sulaiman was tested with unimaginable authority. Qahiril stood at his side as an angelic force, ensuring that power never became pride and wealth never became attachment. Qahiril helped him recognize worldly power as nothing but a divine loan. With Prophet Ayyub's patience is the purest manifestation of Qahiril's influence. Qahiril subdued the nafs that would normally collapse under pain. His light suppressed despair, anger, and irritation, leaving only contentment and surrender. With Prophet Yunus, inside the belly of the whale, Prophet Yunus faced overwhelming fear. The angels of Qahir held his mind firm and prevented panic from overwhelming faith. When he said, La ilaha illa anta subhanaka, it was Qahiril's influence that cleared the heart of all other concerns. Prophet Zakaria, in old age, when biological limitation could cause despair, Qahiril reinforced Prophet Zakaria's faith that Allah can create beyond natural laws. With Prophet Yahya lived a life of purity and restraint. His entire existence is considered an embodiment of Qahiril's force, subduing desires until only light remained. With Prophet Isa was tested with spiritual pride because he performed miracles. Qahiril protected him from subtle arrogance by crushing the ego each time it rose. His life of asceticism is considered a sign of Qahiril's mastery over worldly temptation. With Prophet Muhammad, Qahiril's greatest manifestation was with the seal of the prophets. He supported the Prophet's refusal of Quraysh's offer of wealth, power, and kingship, the Prophet's absolute chastity and purity, his self-restraint under persecution, his patience at Ta'if, his ability to forgive enemies, his calmness under emotional pressure, his total surrender in every divine test. Tasawwufi masters say Qahiril stood at the Prophet's heart as a barrier between him and all lower desires, ensuring complete purity of intention and steadfastness beyond the capacity of ordinary beings. Role in Tasawwuf and Tariqat. 1. Qahiril as the heavenly regulator of the Nafs. In Tasawwuf, the entire spiritual journey can be described as a battle between the Nafs al-Sufla, the lower self, and the Nafs al-Ulwa, the elevated self. Qahiril is understood as the angelic force appointed to subdue the rebellious impulses that pull the seeker toward dunya, lust, ego, and heedlessness. The Tasawwufi masters teach that every moment of remembrance brings this angel closer and every moment of heedlessness distances him. Qahiril appears not only as a protector but as a divine enforcer. He presses upon the heart whenever unlawful desires rise, creating an inner heaviness that repels sin. Thus, he is the unseen regulator, ensuring the seeker never commits spiritual treason against his own soul. 2. Qahiril and the internal jihad. The jihad al-Nafs, the greatest jihad in Sufism, is not the external battlefield but the fight within. Qahiril is the angel overseeing this battlefield. His presence reinforces the discipline of mujahada, the struggle to restrain the ego. When the seeker enters into dhikr with sincerity, Qahiril constricts the influence of shaitan and energizes the divine light that fights from within. In this way, the Tasawwufi masters say Qahiril tightens the reins of the heart. He ensures that the murid is constantly reminded of Allah's supremacy over their will, training them to pass from hawa whim to huda guidance. 3. Qahiril's role in purifying the 7 levels of Nafs. The 7 levels of Nafs, Amara, Lawama, Mulhama, Mutmaina, Radia, Madia and Kamila, each have their own impurities, illusions and spiritual diseases. According to Tariqat teachings, Qahiril presides over the first 3 levels especially, since these are the domains where lower desires dominate. His influence increases as the seeker ascends. At every level, he crushes a specific veil, breaks a specific spiritual chain, and weakens a specific demonic whisper. Thus, the journey to Nafs al-Kamila is a progressive intensification of Qahiril's support, shaping the soul until it becomes a polished mirror of divine will. 4. Qahiril and the activation of the heart's light called Nur al-Qalb. The heart is the battlefield of light and darkness. Sufis teach that whenever unlawful desire becomes strong, the heart darkens and the nafs grows. Qahiril acts as the heavenly agent who triggers the expansion of Nur al-Qalb so that unlawful desires lose their grip. He does this not through compulsion but through divine assistance. He places serenity, firmness, and clarity in the heart during temptation. When the seeker practices muraqabah, called meditative awareness, Qahiril stabilizes the inner witnessing, making the heart receptive to divine flashes called lawami. In essence, he is the protector of the heart's lamp. 5. Qahiril and the Murshid-Murid relationship. In Tariqat, the Murshid is the physician of the soul and Qahiril is the unseen assistant who operates internally. The Murshid diagnoses the spiritual disease, Qahiril suppresses its roots. The Murshid offers guidance, Qahiril strengthens the heart to follow it. The Murshid unveils delusions, Qahiril breaks the egoic resistance that tries to hold on to them. Therefore, Sufi masters say the Murshid fights the nafs externally and Qahiril fights it internally. Without this angelic support, the nafs would overpower the murid, for the ego defends itself with astonishing ferocity. Qahiril ensures that every command of the Murshid penetrates deeply into the soul. 6. Qahiril and the discipline of dhikr. In dhikr, lower desires are burned, dissolved and replaced by divine longing. Sufi tradition holds that Qahiril stands over the murid during dhikr, suppressing the whispers that try to distract, lowering the flames of lust and cutting the roots of arrogance. His name, rooted in Qahar, the overwhelming subduer, reflects Allah's attribute manifesting through him. Dhikr is the battlefield where Qahiril exercises spiritual dominance. Each repetition of the divine name increases his power over the nafs. Therefore, regular dhikr is considered the fastest way to bring Qahiril into one's life. 7. Qahiril and the path of fasting called Som al-Sufiya. Fasting, according to Sufis, is the strangling of desire. Its aim is to weaken the animalistic impulses that feed the ego. Qahiril works intensely during periods of fasting because hunger opens the gates of spiritual perception. The angel stabilizes the seeker's resolve and pushes away the whispers that attempt to break the fast. Moreover, he brings serenity in hunger and sweetness in restraint. For this reason, the Sufi fast is not only abstention from food but also from anger, greed, fantasy and lust, domains where Qahiril exerts his divine authority. 8. Qahiril and the fight against whisperings called wasawis. The lower desires are continually fueled by shaitan's whisperings. Qahiril stands as the celestial sword that cuts these whisperings before they solidify into intentions or actions. Sufi manuals describe 3 stages of whispering: passing thought, settled thought, and intent. Qahiril suppresses the 2nd and 3rd stages by placing divine awe called heba in the heart. His function is not merely to remove whisperings, but to replace them with remembrance. This is why seekers sometimes feel an unexplained fear at the moment of temptation. It is Qahiril's spiritual blow. 9. Qahiril and the training of adab called spiritual manners. Adab is the ornament of the Sufi path. Modesty, humility, silence, patience, control of the tongue, and gentleness. Qahiril enforces adab by weakening the impulses that sabotage it, such as jealousy, anger, boastfulness, and impatience. When a murid violates adab, Qahiril withdraws slightly and the heart feels unrest. When adab is restored, his presence returns with tranquility. This is why Tasawwufi masters insist that adab is not merely etiquette, it is a spiritual environment in which angelic assistance can descend. 10. Qahiril as the guardian of spiritual openings called fath. A fath is a divine opening in the heart when veils are lifted and deeper realities become visible. However, the Nafs seeks to steal these openings for self-glorification, turning spiritual blessings into egoic pride. Qahiril's role is to protect the murid from this spiritual theft. He extinguishes pride at the moment it arises and prevents the seeker from becoming intoxicated by visions, dreams, or subtle spiritual states. His presence ensures that every opening is used for humility and service, not reputation. 11. Qahiril and the refinement of desires called Ta'dib al-Hawa. The Tasawwufi path does not eliminate desire completely, it refines it. Qahiril redirects the energy of desires toward divine love instead of worldly attachment. When the murid desires praise, he transforms it into desiring Allah's pleasure. When the murid desires wealth, he transforms it into desiring spiritual richness. When the murid desires companionship, he transforms it into longing for divine intimacy. This transformation is one of the deepest works of Qahiril, who channels the raw fire of desire into the light of yearning. 12. Qahiril and the battle of intentions called Niyat. The Tasawwufi masters teach that the entire path rests on intention. Qahiril assists the seeker in purifying their intention from hidden egoistic agendas. He reveals the truth of why the seeker performs worship, whether for status, fear, reward, or genuine love of Allah. Through his spiritual influence, the murid becomes aware of their subtle motives and begins to elevate their intention from self-centeredness to God-centeredness. His action is like a mirror that exposes the secret chambers of the heart. 13. Qahiril and the night vigil called Qiyam al-Layl. The nights are when desires sleep and the soul awakens. Tasawwufi tradition teaches that Qahiril is closest to the believer during the last third of the night. He places longing in the heart to wake, tone in the limbs to rise, and sweetness in worship to continue. Many seekers experience that night worship becomes easier after sincere repentance. This, according to Tasawwufi masters, is Qahiril's intervention. His presence during Qiyam is said to melt the rust from the heart. 14. Qahiril and the crushing of arrogance. Arrogance is the throne upon which the Nafs sits. Qahiril's mandate includes crushing this throne. Whenever a murid feels superiority, he places hardship, humiliation, or remembrance that humbles the ego. This is not punishment, it is purification. A seeker cannot rise in Marifa while carrying arrogance. Therefore, Qahiril ensures the path remains clean. His work is the dismantling of spiritual pride so that divine light may descend without distortion. 15. Qahiril and the journey to Fana. The ultimate goal of Sufism is the annihilation of the ego in the presence of Allah. Qahiril is the angelic force that gradually weakens the ego's grip until it becomes transparent. He clears the veils, disciplines the impulses, purifies intentions, stabilizes dhikr, and extinguishes pride. When the murid finally reaches the state where the ego becomes silent, Qahiril's task is complete. He escorts the seeker toward Baqa, remaining in Allah after annihilation. Thus, Qahiril is the angel of transformation, the silent architect of the Sufi soul. Tasawwufi commentaries. 1. Imam al-Ghazali. In the spirit of Ghazali's Ihya, Qahiril represents the angelic force that subdues the tyrannical Nafs. Ghazali teaches that the human being contains four forces: bestial, predatory, satanic, and angelic. When the bestial and predatory rise with hunger, anger, lust, or indulgence, Allah sends Qahiril as the unseen check and balance. Imam Ghazali would say that every moment a believer manages to restrain a sinful impulse, a flash of Qahiril's light has entered the chest. He is the angel who strengthens intellect against desire, humility against arrogance, and remembrance against heedlessness. Without Qahiril's dominance, the Nafs would overpower the intellect entirely. Thus, in Imam Ghazali's framework, Qahiril is the secret warrior that Allah appoints to anyone embarking on the path of purification called Tazkiyah, and his presence grows stronger as the seeker grows in sincerity. 2. Hazrat Ibn Arabi sees the cosmos as layers of divine manifestations. Qahiril for him is not merely an angelic being, but an emanation of divine overpowering that descends into the heart to dismantle the illusions of desire. He would describe Qahiril as a luminous reality in the imaginal realm, the Alam al-Mithal, a force that cuts through the multiplicity of appetites and redirects the seeker toward unity. For Hazrat Ibn Arabi, every time the servant experiences disgust towards sin, clarity after confusion, or sudden strength against an overpowering temptation, it is a sign of Qahiril's tajalli operating within. Qahiril, in this view, is the inward sword of Tawheed that slays the false gods the ego builds. His action is subtle, energetic, and metaphysical, an inner divine movement that breaks the knots, binding the soul to the lower world. 3. Sheikh Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani. In the style of the Gauth al-Azam, Qahiril is the disciplinarian angel, the one who arrests the rebellious Nafs and brings it into the court of divine obedience. Sheikh Abd al-Qadir would say that the Nafs is a thief that steals your time, a wolf that devours your purity, and a serpent that poisons your intentions, and Qahiril is the hunter who captures it. When a believer feels a sudden awe called Heba that extinguishes sinful desire, or a wave of sincerity that sweeps through the heart, that is Qahiril enforcing the command of Allah. Hazrat Jilani would add that the seeker who calls upon Allah in moments of temptation is immediately surrounded by angelic soldiers with Qahiril leading them. His task is to restore the soul's loyalty to Allah by crushing the mutiny of the ego. 4. Hazrat Shams Tabriz speaks the language of fire and passion, and he would describe Qahiril as the angel of overthrowing counterfeit loves. The lower desires are, in Hazrat Shams's teaching, not merely impulses, they are attachments that veil the heart from the beloved. Qahiril arrives like a flame that scorches the loves that compete with Allah. When a seeker feels a painful detachment from a desire, be it a sin, a person, an addiction, or a worldly pleasure, Hazrat Shams would say, "The fire of Qahiril has touched you." He is the angel that exposes the ugliness of hollow cravings and awakens the heart to the majesty of divine love. To Hazrat Shams, Qahiril is not a punisher but a purifier. He destroys so that Allah may build love anew. 5. Maulana Rumi would portray Qahiril as the angelic swordsman of the inner battlefield. The heart is a king, he teaches, but it is imprisoned by the chains of desire. Qahiril is the warrior who shatters those chains one by one. When the seeker turns away from temptation and turns toward Allah, Maulana Rumi would say, "You have heard the sword of Qahiril unsheathed within you." Maulana Rumi would also describe Qahiril as the one who converts the fire of lust into the fire of divine yearning. The same energy that once pulled the seeker downward becomes, through Qahiril's intervention, an upward wind carrying the soul toward Allah. Thus for Maulana Rumi, Qahiril is the transformer of energies, the alchemist of the spirit who turns base instinct into sacred longing. Possibility of seeing them, one, seeing them in real life. In the physical world, Qahiril is not seen with the eyes, because angels only appear outwardly by direct command of Allah. Sufi masters affirm that angels responsible for inner purification, like Qahiril, manifest not as physical beings but as forces, states, and spiritual influences. Thus, seeing Qahiril in the real world happens as a sudden strength to overpower a sinful impulse. A person may feel an irresistible force helping them defeat lust, anger, pride, or addiction. Sufis say this overpowering light is the work of Qahiril, a heavy spiritual pressure that silences the rebellious Nafs. This appears during moments of intense self-control or mujahada, a presence of awe, authority, or divine discipline within the heart. The seeker senses that the power is not from themselves, but from a higher angelic force, seen only by the purified hearts of awliya. Saints may witness Qahiril symbolically, as a warrior of light, a guardian, or a majestic force restraining the ego. These forms are not his actual form, but symbolic expressions of his function. This requires a murshid. Without a spiritual guide, people cannot distinguish angelic inspirations, imagination, whisperings of shaitan, or voices of the nafs. Thus, true perception in real life occurs only for the trained and purified hearts. 2. Seeing them in dreams. Dreams are the most common avenue through which spiritual seekers encounter angels related to the inner self. Dreams translate spiritual realities into symbols. Because angels are subtle beings, the dream realm expresses them in light, powerful figures, warriors defeating dark shapes, chains binding shadowy impulses, a stern luminous being overpowering a beast, symbol of nafs. All these are dream parables of Qahiril's work, appears during a seeker's struggle with desire. If someone is engaged in repentance or purification, dreams may show their nafs being restrained, desires being crushed, light overwhelming darkness, internal demons being defeated. This dream victory is considered the influence of Qahiril, confirmed through spiritual interpretation called Tabi al-Ruya. The Murshid interprets these dreams correctly. Without guidance, dreams can be confused with illusions from the ego. Dream visions are considered real spiritual encounters. Tasawwufi masters say, the dream is the mirror of the unseen. Thus, dream encounters with Qahiril are authentic spiritual messages and a sign of progress in inner purification. 3. Seeing through kashf, the inner unveiling. This is the highest form of witnessing, granted only to deeply purified seekers. Kashf is a divine opening, where inner perception, basira, sees what the physical eye cannot. Seen as pure energy, not a formed being, Qahiril appears as blazing light, overpowering force, a majestic presence of divine discipline, a luminous strength that crushes impulses. This is not a dream nor imagination, it is an actual spiritual perception. occurs when the veils of the Nafs are lifted. Sufis teach that the Nafs has 7 layers and countless veils up to 124,000. As these veils fall, the soul begins to perceive angelic realities, experienced during deep dhikr, muraqabah, or after mujahada, during strong remembrance, or after defeating a desire. A seeker may witness Qahiril's presence inwardly. Kashf is rare and not sought directly. Angelic visions are not the goal. Closeness to Allah is. Kashf is a byproduct of sincerity and purification, distinct from imagination. In Kashf, the vision is stable, brings certainty, is free of contradiction, aligns with Sharia, produces humility. Such qualities prove its angelic source. Only the purified and guided can experience this safely. Untrained seekers may mistake their own ego or shaitan for angelic visions. Therefore, Kashf must be under a Kamil Murshid who verifies the authenticity. Role in the grave. In the grave, when a human is placed alone with nothing except their deeds, the power of desires and ego that once dominated them in the world becomes their greatest enemy. The subtle work of Qahiril, although not mentioned by name in traditional texts, is understood by Tasawwufi masters to manifest as the force that exposes the truth of one's struggle against the Nafs. If the person fought against unlawful desires, controlled impulses, and restrained the ego for Allah's sake, then Qahiril becomes a divine witness to this struggle, strengthening the soul against the terror of the grave and easing the questioning. But if a person surrendered to the Nafs, feeding it until it became tyrannical, then the angelic influence that was meant to suppress it testifies against them, and the Nafs itself becomes a source of torment. Thus, the grave becomes either a garden from the gardens of paradise because desires were dominated in life, or a pit of hellfire because desires overwhelmed the soul. The presence of Qahiril in the unseen dimension of the grave represents the divine justice that tracks every moment a servant battled their lower impulses, turning those victories into light and comfort in the first stage of the hereafter. Role of Qahiril in Barzakh. In Barzakh, the world between death and resurrection, Qahiril's influence becomes more subtle but more complete. This stage is where the true shape of the Nafs appears. For the purified, the Nafs becomes peaceful, restful, and tranquil, known as the Nafs al-Mutma'inna, and Qahiril's role is to guard this state from regression or corruption by the leftover whispers of earthly desire. For the corrupt soul, Barzakh becomes the arena where the Nafs manifests as a predatory, dark force shaped by a lifetime of indulgence. Qahiril, in this context, is the angelic force that restrains and binds the Nafs so it does not devour the soul completely before the day of judgment. It is said in the language of Tasawwuf that the Nafs becomes a beast in Barzakh, and Qahiril is the divine command that keeps it shackled according to the measure of one's worldly self-discipline. Thus, Barzakh becomes the realm where the reality of struggle with the Nafs is unveiled, and Qahiril is the unseen executor of that unveiling, ensuring that no soul is wronged and every internal battle is revealed for what it truly was. Role on the day of Qiyamah. On the day of resurrection, when the realities of every soul are exposed before the throne of Allah, the work of Qahiril reaches a cosmic magnitude. This angel becomes the manifest justice of Allah in measuring how much a servant dominated their desires or was dominated by them. The Quran says, "The one who purified it has succeeded, and the one who corrupted it has failed." And Qahiril becomes the embodiment of this verse on that day. Those who conquer their lower desires find their nafs transformed into a luminous companion that leads them towards salvation. And the angelic force that once fought their impulses now testifies in their favor. For those who surrendered to desires the Nafs becomes a hideous witness, and Qahiril appears as the divine force that stands against them, unveiling the truth of their rebellion. Thus, Qiyamah becomes the arena where this angel of dominance reveals the final verdict, whether the servant was a ruler over their desires or a slave to them. The strength of Qahiril becomes either a testimony of triumph or a testimony of doom. Role of Qahiril at the Mizan, the scale of deeds. At the Mizan, the scales of justice, where Allah weighs every deed with perfect precision. Qahiril plays a role tied directly to how much a person resisted forbidden desires. Every moment of self-control, every time one walked away from temptation, every instant where the heart said no to the nafs, all of these become heavier than mountains on the scale. Sufi scholars explain that acts of restraining desire are among the heaviest deeds because they confront the strongest enemy of man, their own self. Qahiril is the angelic force that safeguards these moments and brings them to the scale untouched by corruption or forgetfulness. For those who are slaves to desires, the lack of such deeds causes the scale to fall empty, because the nafs consumes and nullifies good actions done without sincerity. In this moment, Qahiril testifies to every battle fought and every temptation subdued, becoming a witness that strengthens the believer's side of the Mizan and leads them towards salvation. Role of Qahiril at the Pul Sirat, a bridge over hellfire. Pul Sirat is sharper than a sword and thinner than a hair, stretched across hell, and every soul must cross it. On this bridge, Qahiril's role becomes the decisive force that stabilizes the believer according to their mastery over desire. Sufi masters say that crossing the Sirat mirrors how much a person allowed their desires to dominate them in the world. Those who were slaves to lust, pride, anger, and ego stumble, slip, and fall, while those who conquered their nafs walk swiftly and safely. Qahiril becomes the divine strength that supports the purified believer, helping them pass over quickly like lightning. The one who disciplined their ego is made light on that bridge, but the one who fed their ego becomes heavy and dragged down. It is said spiritually that the flames of hell below attempt to pull down those whose desires once burned uncontrollably within them. Qahiril stands as the angelic force that pushes back the gravity of hell, lifting the purified souls across and leaving the corrupted souls to be seized by what they nurtured in life. Thus, the Sirat is the final battlefield of the nafs, and Qahiril is the one who declares the final victory or defeat. Protection and awareness through a Kamil Murshid. True protection from the dominion of the lower desires begins with submitting oneself to a Kamil Murshid, a perfected guide whose heart has already conquered the nafs, crossed the valleys of temptation, and reached the meadows of divine nearness. The nafs is subtle, intelligent, shape-shifting. It deceives even the most educated but cannot hide its diseases from the gaze of a realized sheikh. When a disciple sits in the presence of such a murshid, an unseen light descends that weakens the roots of desire. The murshid becomes the mirror in which the ego is exposed, the physician who diagnoses without needing words, the purifier who applies spiritual disciplines tailored to the disciple's hidden weaknesses. Under a murshid, the disciple learns the art of self-observation, the ability to distinguish between desires and inspirations, impulses and intuitions. The murshid does not destroy the nafs by force. He teaches the seeker how to transform it. Through companionship, gentle rebuke, spiritual practices, and transmission of inner light called tawajjuh, the murshid channels Qahiril's authority into the disciple's heart. Every instruction becomes a shield, every prohibition a remedy, every moment of humility a blow to the ego's throne. Without a murshid, the nafs becomes the student of shaitan. With a murshid, the nafs becomes a servant of Allah. A murshid awakens the seeker to the reality that every breath is a form shaped by zikr. By teaching breath zikr, the murshid transforms the human into a being of continuous remembrance, surpassing angels. A kamil murshid, meaning a perfect spiritual guide, is considered in tasawwuf the inheritor of the Prophet, guiding seekers on the path from clay, meaning nafs, to light, meaning ruh. The kamil murshid helps awaken this nafas al-Rahman, meaning breath of the All-Merciful, within the disciple. Also as stated in Surah Qaf, verse 17, whoever Allah guides is truly guided, but whoever He leaves to stray, you will never find for them a murshid, meaning a spiritual guide. Angels are always in dhikr, but their dhikr is fixed and limited to the forms Allah gave them. Man, however, through guidance of a murshid, can transform his every breath into dhikr, making his remembrance continuous, like angels, and even higher because it comes through free will. In tariqat, the murshid teaches habs al-nafas, meaning watching the breath, and zikr kafi, meaning silent dhikr. Every inhalation and every exhalation affirms Allah and He alone. This makes the seeker live in the constant rhythm of divine presence. Through the Quran is the greatest fortress against the attacks of desire and the clearest guide to understanding the movements of the nafs. Its verses strike directly at the heart, exposing the illusions of worldly delight and reminding the soul of its higher purpose. Verses about patience extinguish the fires of impulse. Verses about accountability weaken the legs of sinful desires. Verses about paradise elevate the vision above momentary pleasure. Verses about hell soften the arrogance of the ego. Continuous recitation creates an inner fragrance that the nafs cannot tolerate, for the Quran is a sword of divine truth that slices through false justifications, hollow excuses, and emotional distortions. When recited with presence, the Quran becomes a living light that supports Qahiril's work, illuminating the traps laid by the ego and giving strength to resist them. Every prostration while reciting, every tear shed in understanding, every moment of reflection places the believer under a canopy of divine protection. Through dua is the cry of the heart that humbles the ego, and humility is the greatest weapon against desire. When the servant raises their hands and admits their weakness, desire loses its power. The Prophet taught that whoever asks Allah sincerely for protection from the evils of the nafs will be protected, for Allah never rejects the cry of one seeking purity. Du'as such as Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min shari nafsi, O Allah, I seek refuge in you from the evil of my own self, and Rabbi la takilni illa nafsi tarfata, Ain, O my Lord, do not leave me to my nafs for even the blink of an eye, are spiritual armors. Each sincere plea invites Qahiril's assistance, strengthening the soul at the exact moment temptation approaches. Dua cleanses the heart, softens the ego, and opens the doors of divine help. Acts to do. To align oneself with the protection of Qahiril, one must engage in actions that weaken the lower desires and strengthen the soul. Regular prayer disciplines the ego by forcing it to bow. Fasting burns the roots of desire. Charity melts greed. Night worship crushes laziness. Dhikr purifies the inner mirror. Service to others weakens selfishness. The seeker should also adopt periods of silence, meditation, and muraqabah, inner watchfulness, to become aware of subtle impulses before they grow. Keeping righteous company uplifts the heart, while reading lives of prophets and saints inspires discipline. The more good one does, the stronger the presence of Qahiril becomes within the inner world. Acts to avoid. Protection requires consciously avoiding anything that feeds the nafs. One must stay away from uncontrolled glances, indulgent speech, idle entertainment, anger, arrogance, envy, and anything that awakens inner cravings. Avoiding toxic environments, sinful companionship, excessive luxury, and situations that tempt the heart is essential. The seeker must avoid rationalizing sins, hiding inner weaknesses, or nurturing secret desires. These are seeds from which the nafs grows into a tyrant. Avoiding pride in spiritual progress is also crucial, for the nafs transforms good deeds into its own throne if not watched carefully. So, dear viewers, Qahiril stands as the divinely appointed guardian over the battlefield of desire, watching every movement of the nafs, recording every victory of patience and every fall of weakness. He is not an angel of punishment, but of transformation, guiding the believer to master their impulses and ascend towards spiritual maturity. The struggle against desire is not a burden but the very path to closeness with Allah. Without it, the soul remains earthbound, but through it, the soul learns to soar. With the Quran as shield, dua as weapon, righteous actions as armor, a Kamil Murshid as commander, and conscious avoidance as discipline, the believer becomes aligned with Qahiril's luminous mission. Every act of resistance becomes a jewel, every temptation overcome a wing of light, every tear shed for purity a garden in the hereafter. And when the final journey begins, through the grave, barzakh, resurrection, the scales and the sirat, every moment conquered under Qahiril's domain will rise as a friend, protect the servant and carry them safely toward the eternal nearness of Allah. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoy this content and find it beneficial, we kindly ask you to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more authentic, faith-strengthening content. And let's continue this journey of knowledge together. Inshallah, see you in the next video. Allah Hafiz.